Hello friends, Honsin here. Welcome back to the DualShockDebrief, my weekly PlayStation analysis video where I analyze the general video game news of the week with a focus on Sony's PlayStation. This is debrief number 2. I'm recording this on Thanksgiving morning very early, and I would like to render a fair gobble to you and yours, and I apologize if Sony's acquisition of From Software occurs randomly sometime before Saturday. That's a joke, of course. The DualShockDebrief goes live every Saturday at a mysterious time here on INT Media, my video games analysis YouTube channel. Here on INT, we also we don't punch anything, but we do post a bunch of videos about video games, so if you're into that sort of shit, hit that subscribe button, please. And just as always, we are going to break this analysis video down into 3 key parts. I'll be starting off with the big one, the biggest piece of video game news of the week from my perspective, PlayStation agnostic. Then I'll move into the most girthy and nutritious segment of the video where I'll do my damnedest to analyze PlayStation. And finally, we'll conclude with what I've been playing. Let's get started. So the big one for this week is not really that much of a big one, but do want to say that Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition is releasing on 5 December. So this is going to include Cyberpunk 2077 as well as the Phantom Liberty expansion. You can buy it in one physical release as well as a digital release. I'm sure this game is finally playable without any problems. So if you never played it and you want to just jump right in, that was the time to do it. It is a wonderful game, and it's definitely going to continue to make splashes throughout the video game industry and throughout the lives of gamers, so you should definitely check it out because it's great, it's awesome, I love it. If you don't know what build to play, I would highly recommend a shotgun solo build. It's really fun, especially if you like to move around fast and get close and shoot people. It is a little annoying. CD Projekt Red is milking this game for everything it is possibly worth, and they totally fucked up the launch, so it is kind of annoying, but nonetheless, it's a great game. You should check it out. Love it. You should also check out Cyberpunk Edgerunners if you've never seen it, because that anime is arguably life-changing, and it's only like 10 episodes. It's great. And just as a fun fact, the Xbox Series X version of the game will come with 3 discs. I guess one's a data disc, one's the base game, and one's Phantom Liberty. But yeah. This is a quote from CD Projekt Red, quote, "The Xbox Series X box contains 3 discs with the base game and expansion. The PlayStation 5 box includes a game disc with Cyberpunk 2077 and a code for the expansion to be redeemed in the PlayStation Store. The PC version comes with a GOG code for both the base game and the expansion. The reason for the difference in how Phantom Liberty is included in the Ultimate Edition is due to the technical requirements specific to each platform," end quote. So yeah, gee whiz, 3 discs. Wow, what the fuck? CD Projekt Red has always been pretty cool about including fun stuff in their physical releases. I remember when Cyberpunk 2077 came out, they had a cool map with a bunch of stickers and stuff and a postcard, I think, which was cool. They did more than most people do when they have physical releases. So yeah, if you want to buy it physically, even if you played the game already, I'm sure it'd be worth the money. This game's amazing now. Some people try to make the argument that they try to be cute and say Cyberpunk 2077 is the game of the year for this year, and I just want to fucking tell them to shut up because that's an annoying argument, but I understand where they're coming from. So also wanted to pick up and record here. I'm in the editor's room right now, actually, and I realized that I completely neglected to cover the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic PS5 remake news that has currently been circulating, and I think why I chose to omit this is because I think it's clear that this project has been plagued for years, ever since it was announced back in 2021. It's been over 2 years since it was announced now, so you got to keep that in mind. And also, I don't know, it's just a complicated project, and there's been a lot of conflicting rumors and reports. We got that news, I think it was back in 2022, where it was essentially the project, Aspire had been fired from the project, and then it passed to Saber Interactive, and now Saber Interactive is working on it or whatever. And look, Jeff Grubb is reporting that the game is basically canceled, it's dead. But now we're seeing there's a report from Push Square that I'm looking at right now that says Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic PS5 remake is reportedly not dead, and there's 2 people still working on it. So look, I just want to say, I don't really know what's going on here, and that's okay. I don't think anyone knows what's really going on with this project. I will say that it seems a little silly for PlayStation to announce this game and claim that it's being remade, and they made a big deal about it in their showcase back in 2021, where they said that this is getting remade for the PS5 and it's going to be this big deal, it's going to be crazy, and then they just cancel it after passing it around to 2 different people. Look, I just gotta say, like, it is a little strange that PlayStation's involved in this at all. This should really be going to Xbox, because this is inherently an Xbox game through and through, and I think Xbox at this point needs to step in and, you know, foot some money and make things happen and get this thing off the ground, because Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic is an incredibly important game, arguably one of the most influential RPGs of its time, as well as, like, I mean, it's just a great game, and it's a great Star Wars game, and there's not really too many great Star Wars games, believe it or not. Like, now we got, you know, Star Wars Jedi with Fallen Order and Survivor, you know, and then we got like a few other ones, like the old Battlefront games, a few of the, like, you know, space fighter games and whatnot. But nonetheless, gotta say, huge bummer that this is such a kerfuffle right now. Especially, it's just not a good look for PlayStation. I gotta say it. Like, I mean, you know, they gotta do what they need to do to make sure that this project comes back to life. This is a really important game. It would be great for their system if they got it right. But if they're going to cancel it, like, Xbox needs to swoop in and make this thing happen and get it off the ground. And there's a lot of conflicting information going on with this game in general. I think PlayStation needs to just, like, you know, be a big boy and say what's going on and be honest. And I just really don't like how, generally speaking, they're not being honest about they're not being transparent, at least, about a lot of the things that they're doing. And they don't have to be, right? But at the same time, it's frustrating as people that care about video games and people that would like to know what's going on, even if it is not a good look for the brand or the company. But yeah, I don't know. It sucks that this game is canceled. I've played Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. I never beat it, but I played it a lot throughout my life, and it just kind of picked it up and dabbled. I think it's a great game, and I think, like, it's arguably super influential on the way that RPGs were made after, especially given that this is old BioWare, right? Like, basically BioWare were from this, and they went to, like, Jade Empire, then they did a few other things, and then eventually they made Mass Effect, right? Like, and it's just, this game deserves better, and it's too important to just kind of throw to the wayside because it's not working out, you know? Like, surely they put in a lot of money, they've already put in a lot of effort, and the whole notion that they're just going to quit and move on with their lives is frustrating. And, like, if they are going to quit, then Xbox needs to step in and kind of help them out, do something about it. But that's just what I think. It's a big mess, big mess, and I will conclude by saying that if Xbox doesn't step in and help get this game off the ground or kind of take it over or something, it's clear that there has to be some sort of contractual reason why that's not happening. Like, maybe the remake in whatever state it's currently at, that entirely belongs to PlayStation and Xbox can't have it. I'm sure that they might have had the forward thinking to imagine that if something like this did happen, like in a contingency scenario, that, you know, this is ultimately their game and it's not going to go to anyone else no matter what. But yeah, just wanted to say that. But anyways, that's all I have to say. I just wanted to make sure that I covered it here in the DualShock Debrief, and I hope that you all had a great Thanksgiving and that you're doing good. And yeah, that's all I got. Let's move into the PlayStation news. Number 1. Website Video Games Chronicle VGC reports that, quote, Bonnie Jean Ma is swapping Gears of War for God of War, announcing on X, formerly Twitter, that she has joined Santa Monica Studio as a narrative director, end quote. It seems that Ma has worked in the VGI, or video games industry, for over a decade, with credits ranging from Gears of War, Gears 5, Age of Empires 4, Gears Tactics, Gears of War 4, Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine, Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine. Well, I don't know. She's a writer twice here. Yeah, essentially she started with Warhammer 40,000 and now is, you know, graduated, I guess, to like Gears of War and now God of War, which is odd. Like, you know, one of the best jobs you can probably land in the industry. She's quoted as a writer, and it's unclear what Ma will be working on in her time at Sony Santa Monica, but it's clear that she's amped. She tweeted or X'd the following along with a selfie of her next to our beloved sad dad, Kratos himself. Quote, all right, all caps by the way, let's do this. I'm so, all caps, excited to share my news. I've joined at Sony Santa Monica as a narrative director. I'm beyond thrilled to be working with this team in studio. All caps here, let's go, with like, I don't know, 6 O's. so she's amped. I don't blame her. That's a dope job. Sony Santa Monica is currently working on a new IP, led by beloved director Cory Barlog, as well as some sort of short God of War interstitial game, or DLC. The studio released God of War Ragnarok in November 2022 to critical and commercial success, as well as its predecessor God of War in 2018, a reboot of the beloved franchise. Before this, Sony Santa Monica worked on a canceled IP codenamed Internal 7 and Darkside, which was rumored to be some sort of sci-fi game that is back in development, which is that project that's led by Cory Barlog. Okay, pretty interesting stuff here. So VGC gets into a little bit more analysis, and they say that maybe they are pulling Ma. Yeah, that's her last name is M-A-H, Ma. They're pulling her to work on the Amazon God of War project that's supposedly in development because she did some sort of work in television in the past, which is great. Could totally see that happening. And she's also a very successful narrative lead for like Gears of War. Gears of War's like narratives, like by no means considered like the best of video games, but it's still a good narrative nonetheless. Yes, and I also have to imagine that working at Sony Santa Monica right now is probably one of the best jobs you can imagine in the video game industry. They're crushing it. God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok are both smash hits on every conceivable level. You get to live in Santa Monica. Things could be worse. But yeah, super pumped to see what she does here. We'll find out, I guess, in the future. But yes, that is a new writer joining the PlayStation family, which is interesting. I'm also very curious to see what Santa Monica is going to be working on in the future, because they've taken God of War and they've, openly said that that game was going to be a duology. And while I imagine they're going to do something again with Atreus in the future, I feel like Kratos is kind of retired as a PlayStation character, but I don't know, could be wrong. I feel like they've done everything they can with Kratos and that whole saga of God of War. It'll be interesting to see like Atreus go to Egypt and kill all those gods. That would be kind of wild. Would be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm also very curious to see what's going on with this sci-fi IP, because it was a very notoriously tortured project at Sony Santa Monica back in the day before God of War 2018 released. There's a whole documentary, you can go watch it. It's called Raising Kratos on PlayStation. They talk about the canceled project ad nauseum. They don't really show a whole lot, but it's clear that they're bringing it back, and Cory Barlog is heading the charge on that front, and they're trying to really get that game to where it needs to be, and they have a bunch of goodwill stored up with God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok. So I'm very interested to see what that project is going to be, what kind of game it is, right? Like, we can guess that it's a third-person narrative, over-the-shoulder, traditional Sony game, but we don't really know. It could be a whole bunch of different stuff. Like, it could be a roguelike, like kind of like Returnal. It could be a survival horror game. Like, we have no idea what it's going to be. So, yeah, very interested to see what's going on there. And Sony Santa Monica is easily one of the most talented studios in the industry. I loved both God of War games that we've gotten recently with 2018 and Ragnarok. Especially Ragnarok's combat is just, oh man, chef's kiss. It's great. I will say, and I feel like I'm in the majority here, I don't need any more Atreus. I'm just going to be honest. He's not really that much of a likable character. He's fine. I like him because Kratos is his father, but like, when I was playing as Atreus in God of War Ragnarok, I was just not having fun, and I know I'm not the only one that feels that way. So the idea of an Atreus-centered game just doesn't really sound that cool, but I hope I can eat my words, because it's clear as day that that's what they're going to do. So we'll see what happens. Number 2, bottom line up front, Galaxy Brained Twitter/X page, Look for the Light, a Last of Us news page, adeptly found the following information. It looks like No Return, the upcoming roguelike combat gauntlet for The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, will potentially feature 12 levels, according to Colin Freeman, an ex-Naughty Dog employee who listed that he worked on a total of 12 unique levels for No Return. Based off of the trailer we received last week, it looks like at least Jackson, the hotel where you fight a bloater with Joel in an Ellie flashback, the hospital where you kill Nora downtown Seattle, and the parking garage from Seattle are all playable levels in the new mode. Additionally, it's important to point out that Look for the Light mentions that it will be possible to play as Tommy, Dina, Jesse, Lev, and Mel in No Return, as well as more unlockable characters in addition to those 5 characters. No Return will be included in The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, which launches on 19 January 2024 alongside the remastered version of the base game, remastered cut content, developer commentary, and additional player skins. So yeah, not a whole lot to say here, although it's just clear that people are excited for No Return, the roguelike mode in The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, and I don't blame them. I can't wait. I'm gonna get all the trophies in that mode. The Last of Us Part 2's combat is amazing. It's like a guerrilla warfighter simulator. It's sick. I love The Last of Us's combat, just generally speaking. And as far as these other unlockable characters go, I really hope that you can play as like Nathan Drake or something, or like Nadine. That would make me really pumped. I love those characters and I love Uncharted. But yes, not too much to say. 12 unique levels for No Return. That sounds cool. Obviously, like, it's going to be procedurally generated content. It would be pretty sweet if you could somehow play this with your friends in like a multiplayer co-op setting. But, you know, I guess that's a sore subject over at Naughty Dog given the current state of the faction's live service game and that whole debacle. So understand why that's not the case, but nonetheless, am really excited to play The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. I'll get into what I'm playing like when I get to that segment of the video, but I'm playing The Last of Us again right now, and I gotta say, I'm actually playing Part 2 again because I want to try to get the PS4 trophies before I play The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered on PS5, and then get the trophies on that game as well. But I have to say that The Last of Us Part 2 is awesome. I initially wasn't really super hot on it like most people are, but I would argue that the game is just completely... It's a better game when you play it the second time because there's so many narrative beats that you can kind of just dig more into and look at from a different perspective on a second playthrough. And the gameplay is just like on another level. It's the best gameplay Naughty Dog has ever done. So yeah, I can't wait to talk about it and what I'm playing, but yeah, I love The Last of Us, and I can't wait for The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. Number 3, website Video Games Chronicle reports the following, quote, a class action lawsuit accusing Sony of overcharging PlayStation Store customers by up to £5 billion, which is the equivalent of $6.27 US, can finally proceed to trial. The UK Specialist Competition Court has ruled the lawsuit filed on August 2022 by consumer rights campaigner Alex Neil on behalf of 8.9 million PlayStation customers, end quote. So this lawsuit is actually really interesting. So the consumer rights campaigner Alex Neil is ultimately arguing that Sony is abusing its dominant position in the video game market by charging excessive PlayStation Store prices. So VGC says, quote, the Japanese company uses its near monopoly on the sale of digital games and add-on content for PlayStation consoles to enforce strict terms and conditions on game developers and publishers. The human rights campaigner ultimately argues, end quote. So, according to this, I'm just going to keep reading because VGC does a great job here. Quote, according to the suit, these terms enable the company to dictate the price of digital content and charge a 30% commission on every purchase, which, quote, results in excessive and unfair prices to consumers, end quote, that are, quote, out of all proportion to the costs of Sony providing these services to its customers, end quote. So yeah, VGC goes on to say that Sony pushed back, arguing that this case is flawed from start to finish. But yeah, the UK's Competition Appeal Tribunal has given Neil the authority to go ahead and take this to court. So we'll see how it pans out, right? Like, I don't really know if this guy has a snowball's chance in hell of like actually defeating Sony in court, but we'll see. People are upset that Sony has, kind of responded to inflation in a little bit of a ridiculous way by really jacking up their prices, not only on their hardware, but on their games and shit like that. So yeah, we're going to see what happens. This is interesting. I would ultimately assess that this is like a sign of the times more than anything else, right? Like, money's just expensive. Like, everything's expensive. Money's inflated. Currencies are inflated. It's not a good time. So yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. A very interesting case, and we will see how it all pans out. I would also encourage you to go to Video Games Chronicle's website to read this article for yourself, as it's very well written, as always, on Video Games Chronicle, and they report pretty solid news. Number 4. I'm not going to do a full write-up for this one, but just understand that you can save a shit ton of money on PlayStation stuff right now, including but not limited to PlayStation Plus memberships. So it's a good time to stockpile that if you so desire. So yeah, go over to PlayStation, go to the PlayStation Store, buy some memberships, buy some games if you so desire. You can get, money off on hardware. There's a lot of good deals out there right now for Black Friday. So just wanted to throw that in here in case you're looking to pinch a few pennies, get yourself something nice. This is a good time to do it. And also, just generally speaking, the economy is not in a super awesome place. Economists are actually calling this time funflation, if you weren't tracking, where everything is expensive, but people are still spending money on things like PlayStation Black Friday deals, for example. So, yeah, if you want to help the economy or something, go buy something, because that's how this whole thing works, actually. And finally, number 5. Website Push Square conducted a poll amongst its audience regarding which game would be crowned as Game of the Year at the Game Awards. In the poll, an overwhelming 56% predicted that Baldur's Gate 3 would be awarded the prestigious Game of the Year award, while Alan Wake 2 won 7% of the vote, Marvel's Spider-Man 2 won 12% of the vote, Resident Evil 4 won a well-deserving 3% of the vote, Super Mario Bros. Wonder won 1% of the vote, and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom won 20% of the vote. So, an interesting poll. It shows that Baldur's Gate 3 is the overwhelming choice amongst the hardcore audience, and I feel like that's how it's going to shake out. I'm a big RPG fan. I love role-playing games. I have yet to even come within spitting distance of buying Baldur's Gate 3. It's really interesting because it is a very niche game that has just completely penetrated the mainstream, and it's awesome. I really love to see that. It makes me happy from a lover of video games and from a lover of RPGs, and I'm gonna have to get to it at some point, but I'm also there's already way too many things to play this year, and now I'm playing The Last of Us Part 2 again, which is a nice segue into what we're playing. But yeah, just wanna say that here. Baldur's Gate 3 obviously I think is gonna win at the Game Awards, but an interesting poll here from Push Square nonetheless. So anyways, what I'm playing 60-minute EMOM simulators that I can eat whatever I want. I'm just kidding. I'm actually, as I said multiple times, I have gotten back into The Last of Us. Given that The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered was announced last week, I just felt like jumping back in. So, look, I actually have a video cooking that goes into like a lot of details regarding why I don't think people like the game very much. I personally, so just to share my story with you guys, when I first played the game, I did not like the game. I actually, in fact, once I finished the game, I didn't get the Platinum Trophy. Ghost of Tsushima, if you remember correctly, like Ghost of Tsushima came out like basically a month or two after. I want to say The Last of Us came out in like June or July, and then Ghost of Tsushima launched in like July or August. It was something like that. And right when Ghost of Tsushima launched, I literally sold The Last of Us to put money down towards Ghost of Tsushima, just because I was kind of pinching pennies at the time, and I was like, I don't think I'm ever gonna play The Last of Us Part 2 again, because the story just wasn't what I wanted. And I think that's kind of the road. That's what the main critiques of the game revolve around. And if you actually go check out The Last of Us Part 2 on Metacritic, it's like Metacritic score is pretty high. It's at like a 93, but then the user score is like a 5.8. Like, it's just really not good. And that's what I think ultimately. That's why I think that people don't like that game, is just because it's just not what they wanted from a story perspective, and that's why you play Naughty Dog games, is for the story. And I don't think the story is bad by any stretch of the imagination. I think the story is challenging, and I think the story is not what people were expecting. Neil Druckmann always talks about how he tries to subvert players' expectations as he's designing games and like crafting the story and stuff. And The Last of Us Part 2 may do that a little too much, but at the same time, I'm playing it again, and when I first played the game, that was back in 2020, so like I was 22 at the time, 21. Now I'm 25, almost 26, and I'm just like a little older. I've had more life experience. I've just been an adult for longer, and I gotta say, man, like, I'm really resonating with the story. I'm really resonating with what it's communicating, and I just genuinely believe that the game is better when you play it again a second time. more details and more plot devices and more of the character nuances just kind of hit different when you're on your second playthrough and you know conceptually what's going to happen in the story. And I'm not going to spoil it here. But just getting, like, seeing how, like, this big thing happens and how, you know, everything in the game is a consequence of what Joel did at the end of The Last of Us 1. On top of, like, how the Abby character comes into play and, like, yeah, and then, like, just to be frank, like, the game is just also challenging from a, like, political, I guess, if you want to call it political. I don't really think it's political. From a political stance, too, where it just challenges notions of, like, sexuality and the transgender movement and things like that. Like, it's just challenging. And I don't really think, a lot of times, right, like, people don't come to video game narratives to be challenged. People come to video games to, like, honestly kill things on a screen. That's why people play video games most of the time. Whether you like it or not, that's kind of just the case. At least from my perspective, right? But, you know, nonetheless, I gotta say, The Last of Us Part 2 really resonating with me right now. I will keep you guys posted as I continue to go through it, but just to keep you guys on track of where I'm at from a games perspective. So I dropped Demon Souls Remake. I mentioned that last week. I started, you know, getting back into Demon Souls Remake, playing that a little bit. I'm just gonna stop for now. I don't really know why. There's something about Demon Souls Remake that just bothers me. I think it's because I've gone backwards from Software. Like, I started with Bloodborne, haven't even touched Dark Souls. Started with Bloodborne, moved from there into, I want to say, Sekiro, and then I moved into, I was going to play Demon Souls Remake and get the Platinum after I Platinum Sekiro, but then Elden Ring blew up, and I was like, well, I just want to play Elden Ring before it becomes irrelevant. And I don't think Elden Ring is ever going to become irrelevant, but you know what I mean. People were still talking about Elden Ring a year after Elden Ring came out, right? And yeah, so I just wanted to see what was going on. There's something with Demon Souls Remake that bothers me on a design front, because you can just tell that From Software's design philosophy when they made Demon Souls is just totally different from where it is now. Like, if you go back and you, like, so you play Elden Ring, you play Bloodborne, you play, I don't know, even Sekiro, like, you play games like that, which are, you know, considered that's like the S tier From Software, is those three games. You go back to Demon Souls. Demon Souls is just totally different in the sense that the level design is just laid out in such a way where you are constantly, like, the areas themselves are more challenging than the bosses, and the path to get to the bosses, that's what's hard about the game, not necessarily the bosses themselves. And I find that to be really interesting. It's an interesting design philosophy, and it's by no means a bad game, but it just kind of bothers me because it's not what I'm used to, I think, from a From Software style Souls game. But I think it's great, and I think Bluepoint did an excellent job with the fidelity and performance features, as I'm sure you've all heard about at this point. But it really is a good game, and I'm glad that it got remade, because it is super, super important, because it's the first Souls-like that we really ever got, and nobody knew what it was when it came out way back. I want to say that was like 2013, but I could be wrong. But yeah, so ultimately have dropped Demon Souls Remake. We'll see if I go back. Also want to correct myself here, because I was totally wrong about Demon Souls' original release on the PS3. So Demon Souls actually came out in 2009, which was actually a really stacked year for video games when you consider Uncharted 2 came out this year, Assassin's Creed 2 came out this year, Dragon Age Origins, Minecraft technically came out this year, Batman Arkham Asylum, Resident Evil 5, Halo Wars. So a lot of, like, really important games came out this year. So Demon Souls, you can understand why that might have faded back into the background, right? But yeah, want to say that I like Demon Souls. I do. I like it. I don't think I love it, but I think it's a good game, and I'm glad that Sony chose to go out of their way to remake it and put Bluepoint on that project, because it is super important, and it is a good game, ultimately. I hate the world tendency shit, but, like, everyone kind of does. But it's important, right? Because you see why From Software chose to abandon that system in its entirety and you know, move on, as it were. So let's see, I'm a little all over the place. So yeah, playing The Last of Us Part 2 again, really enjoying it. Like, really, really, really enjoying it. I'm gonna get the Platinum before the remaster comes out, so then I can get the Platinum. Demon Souls Remake on pause. I'll probably go back to it at some point, but, you know, don't count on it. And then I'm also playing The Last of Us Remastered, like the old PS4 game. The reason for that is also trophies. So I want to get, my ultimate goal that I would like to achieve is that I get the Platinum and The Last of Us Remastered. Then I get the Platinum and The Last of Us Part 2. Then I get the Platinum and The Last of Us Part 1, which was the remake that came out, last year of the first game, Last of Us 1. Also, I gotta tell you guys some crazy shit that I learned. So this isn't really that crazy when you think about it, but it kind of blew my mind because I'm an idiot. So The Last of Us 1, let's just call it that. The Last of Us 1, between The Last of Us, the game that came out in 2013 on the PlayStation 3, The Last of Us Remastered, the PS4 remaster of The Last of Us, and Last of Us Part 1, right? Umbrella, that's like 3 games. It's kind of silly, but they exist across the PS3, PS4, and PS5. Okay. And, I think they should, because they're arguably the most important games that PlayStation has ever made, not just from like a gameplay perspective and like a story perspective, but like they're totally influential on like how PlayStation approached game design in the PlayStation 4 generation and into the PlayStation 5. Anyways, whatever. So, The Last of Us 1, umbrella term for those 3 games. That game has made Naughty Dog, or it's generated over $1 billion in revenue for Naughty Dog, and I'm not fucking kidding. Like, that's a real number. I want to say, and like I did the math, because The Last of Us 1 sold 37 million copies across those 3 games. 37 million copies. I multiplied that number by $35 like per copy, right? Because I was like, well, that game came out at $60. Let's give an average ballpark price of $35 per copy, just as like, and that's probably even a low number if I'm being honest. But like, so I multiplied 35 times 37 million. That comes out to like $1.2 billion. And then if you think about it, on top of that, The Last of Us Part 2 only cost $220 million to make. Like, and I say only, I know it's $220 million, but you get my point. Like, it's $220 million, like it's a quarter of what the first game generated in revenue. And like when people report, when these companies report how much they spent on a game, they're including people's salaries, they're including the overhead, they're including fucking everything. And it's just wild, dude. Like, Naughty Dog, like, they're making a lot of money, dude. Like, a lot of money. And it shows that video games are super relevant and super powerful for making a lot of money, dude. Like, Naughty Dog is easily a multi-billion-dollar company now, like, or at the very least a billion-dollar company right now, right? And that's, like, again, like, I know you know this if you know math, but $1 billion is 999 million. That's a lot. All right, that's a lot. And like, I just want to say, like, people out there, you want to shit on The Last of Us, and I get it. Like, it kind of asks for it in a lot of ways. It's a challenging game on every front, and it's kind of like, begging for like critical acclaim. But dude, people love The Last of Us, man. All you gotta do is look at the HBO series. All you gotta do is look at, like, in Part 2 did not sell anywhere near as well as The Last of Us Part 1, but nonetheless, like, it still sold gangbusters. Like, it sold like 10 million copies. I think it was like 12, 13 was like the final number, but you gotta understand that it's just a really important game on every single front. Very influential, not just for PlayStation's game design, but across the industry. It also definitely inspired people to start making games too. It's just really important. So anyways, wanted to throw that in there as like a crazy fact that I learned. And it's kind of obvious because, The Last of Us is obviously huge, but like the way people talk about it online, you would think that people hate the game. Like, I'm just going to say it. But yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. So anyways, fellas, that is all I got this week for the DualShock debrief. I appreciate you all tuning in. Pretty slow news week in video games, but nonetheless, fun to talk about. I always love talking games, and I appreciate you tuning in. Please, if you like my content, hit the subscribe button, but you don't have to. I don't want to pressure you or nothing. But if you also hated my content, hit the dislike button. Please, I want to know if you hate it. Genuinely, I'm not fucking kidding. And also tell me why you don't like my content so I can get better. But anyways, that's all I got. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Happy Thanksgiving. Hope you all enjoy. If you don't celebrate Thanksgiving or something, you're not American, whatever, that's fine. Hope you have a solid week here at the tail end of November. This is Honsin with INT Media. Out.
The edge of the universe and back. Endure and survive.
Excuse me.
Is that a story? A comic I've been reading? The hero says after a big battle.
Endure and survive.
Yeah.
Okay.